Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome Bandana Tewari. We are at episode 3 of season 1 of India's first of its kind festival of arts, culture, and design. The India Story continues. Now, I've been getting a lot of calls of late. Is this an online show where celebrities get interviewed? Will famous people come on and talk about their upcoming projects? Well, I reckon the questions are quite similar to the ones founder of the India Story, Madhu Nyotia, probably received when she first set up the festival 5 editions ago. Is it a cultural festival or a design fair, people must have asked? And if it's design, is it architecture and interiors or is it fashion design? The thing is, a larger vision is often difficult to understand. The India Story celebrates every creative aspect that lends itself to the story of our country. And it's on Light Avatar, its performances, workshops, and conversations with the people from various creative fields that make up this online event called the India Story continues. Bandana, you haven't been to the India Story yet, but when you do attend the next edition, tell us the one thing you'd be most looking forward to.
I would love to hear more voices from the LGBTQ community. I think they're exemplary people who are paving the way. One of them is Parmesh Sahani, who just released his book called Queeristan.
I've read it and it's fantastic.
Yes. So I think that we need representation, voices to be out there from the LGBT community. So I really look forward to that because they're such creative people, such emotionally invested people. I love that.
Thank you, Bandana. I've met some very interesting people and I'm sure you will too. I see we already have a sizable audience in the house, so I'm going to do the honors of introducing you. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is an old friend and a fellow editor whose work everyone respects. But what everyone respects more and rarely acknowledges is the high level of integrity Bandana Tewari brings to the table. You see, Bandana, you can be a bit intimidating. If your sense of style doesn't exude strength on its own, your voice always knows what it's talking about. Sometimes I wonder how a poor man could muster up the courage to slip in a word when on a date with you. And then I think, you'd never be on a date with a poor man, would you? Bandana Tewari, you were a senior editor at Vogue for over 13 years, an opinion leader in the world of fashion and lifestyle, and a person who has never shied away from standing up against the tide. Yet, when you were at your peak, you chose to give it all up and move to a remote part of the world. You now live in Bali, Indonesia, study sustainability in fashion, and live a life of mindfulness and peace. And then, from the middle of nowhere, you get onto international radio, comment on how Gandhiji's loincloth was a fashion statement that espoused values, and that clip goes viral and gets 1 million views and then some more. Today, we're going to talk about all of that. But first, let's take a look at a short video.
Hi, my name is Bandana Tewari.
I decided to go on a quest, a personal quest, to change my ways. I gave up my job in Vogue India after 13 years. I hope I bowed out gracefully and gratefully. I gave away or donated about 90% of my fashion goodies. I had accumulated so much I could have started a store. I'm a single mom. My daughter was 14 at that time, and we decided to leave Bombay, a bustling city of more than 20 million people, and we decided to move to Bali with 3 suitcases of bare necessities. And then when I got here, I started my journey, my personal quest, and my research into mindfulness in fashion and luxury.
Bandana Tiwari, welcome again. We salute your spirit and your individuality. Since it isn't said enough, let me say it now. What an inspiration you are.
Thank you.
My first question, Bandana.
Yeah.
Tell us in your words the India story from the point of view of fashion.
I'm going to put everything in perspective because we are in COVID times. And I think because it's India's story continues at COVID times, it's important to acknowledge what Indian fashion stands for. Look, we are all like, now we are within our own countries, within our own neighborhoods. We can't travel too much. So I believe that this is a perfect time for us to deep dive into our own culture. I already see younger designers now looking into their own backyards for inspiration, going into their own cultural provenance, talking about mindfulness in the way they're crafting their clothes. Where is the cloth coming from? Where is the fiber coming from? I see that, and that is what is most powerful and compelling story of fashion that can come out globally during these times, which is acknowledging that we already had a history of sustainability. It was in the mindsets of our grandmothers and grandfathers. You know, the sari is a perfect example. We never throw away a sari. We pass it down. They are hand woven. I mean, what could be a better metaphor for sustainability from India than the sari? So we need to take ownership again.
So, since you're talking about the sari, is it true, Bandana, that women in India traditionally wore saris without blouses? And the blouse was actually invented by the prudish British, because the sari on its own without a blouse was too revealing?
Absolutely. I mean, my research shows that, during Victorian times, Indians pretty much wore the sari without the blouse. They would just drape the sari over their chest. But with colonization, in fact, there's a great story. The sister-in-law of Rabindranath Tagore is the one who started making the blouses famous, because she apparently wouldn't be allowed to go into British clubs because she was not wearing a blouse. And so she introduced the blouse, and you can well imagine what that blouse looked like. Had all the nuances of Victorian England, with the lace and the size of the sleeves, which again got appropriated over time. And that Sanjay Garg does that now, right?
Right,
so
absolutely.
It's how it comes around. But yes, traditionally it was worn without the blouse. And the reason being that we forget the Eastern idea of what is erogenous is very different from the Western ideas of erogenous zones. For us, the mangtika, the nape of your neck, the anklet, the waistband, all those are the erogenous zones. So I don't think that history literally pointed at a woman's breasts and said, that is, the point of titillation, because we can go to any temple and see that, all the deities and beautiful statues are pretty much all naked on top. So yeah, it is the Victorianization that came from colonization that we became.
And now we look at the West for being the broad-minded, broad-minded ones in terms of fashion. What about the drapes in India? Do they have a story to tell?
Oh, absolutely. Because, it's funny, now that I live away from India, people think that we are a very homogenized country, which we are not. I keep telling them, if I went down to Kerala, I feel like a tourist because I don't speak the language. The food is new to me. The clothes are also new to me. And that can happen if I go to Kashmir, I go to Ladakh. I mean, the variety is exemplary, right? And I think if you watch closely, the drapes do matter. How the sari is tied differs from region to region. I don't need to go down that path because we are all from India and we know what that means. A Bengali wears a sari in a certain way. A Maharashtrian will wear it in a certain way. But what I find most fascinating is a book that a friend of mine did, Brianna Brasco. She did a book called Dance of the Drapes.
Right.
And she associates the different types of Indian dances and the kind of fabrics that you'd have to wear because of the dance. So the fabric and the dance movements went together. So
Right.
there's so many layers to this draping and the fabrics of India. And this is what I'm saying. Our designers need to go back into those narratives. We need to bring that out into the open, because these are really deep, deep topics that we should be proud of.
And such fascinating stories. We can't wait to hear them all. Talking of drapes, let's come to the drape of all drapes, the one worn by the Mahatma, the father of our country. You were on a show with an Australian news anchor, Hugh Remington, and you spoke about how Gandhiji made a statement by wearing his loincloth. You also said that he made a statement wearing suits in South Africa before that. Tell us about that.
I'll make it very quick, because I believe a lot of us already know this story because we all grew up in India. Well, because Gandhi came from an affluent family, he wanted to be gentrified, he wanted to be westernized, he wore his three-piece suits, went to England to study law. He felt embarrassed that he was a vegetarian. He learned how to play the violin and, all the nuances of the English life. And then he goes to South Africa to practice law, where he's still gentrified and still wearing his three-piece suits, till he gets booted out of a train and he realizes that his very Western attire and his first-class ticket was not good enough for the government at the time. That was very bigoted, and he was booted out. And so at that point, he hadn't even realized the Indianness of his personality, right? But he meets an Indian laborer called Bala Sundaram, who's beaten black and blue, holding his head that is bleeding. And it becomes a pivotal point in his life where he realizes that what he's been doing this far was disingenuous. And he gave up his Western clothes, wore the dhoti and the kurta, the white, fully white. It was called the morning dress. And he changed his path. He made a commitment to understand the plight of the poorer Indians in South Africa, and we all know that he fought for them. And then he comes to India, which is in the throes of colonization, and when he travels through the length and breadth of the country, we know what was happening at that time, with the cotton being sent to the mills in England and sent back to India as very expensive clothes, and it killed our rural economy. And the Khadi movement started when everyone took up the spinning wheel as an act of civil disobedience. It was a political statement. But when he told the country, burn the clothes that come from the mills of England, the poorest of the poor didn't even have clothes. What were they going to burn? And at that time, he realized he still didn't understand. He still wasn't authentic enough in his journey. And that's when he wears the loincloth as an act of affirmation, of solidarity, of authenticity. And then when he goes to England to talk about independence, and there is Churchill who calls him the fakir, the poorest of the poor, that half-naked fakir, Gandhi took that as a compliment. He realized, now you see that my moral compass is transparent with the clothes that I wear. Now that is sartorial integrity. Who would have thought that you can put two words of that kind together? You actually say fashion integrity, because we've all believed that fashion is undemocratic, elitist, not political. And that's what's fed to us, especially because most of the fashion that we learn about in India is also filtered through a Western lens. So I thought this Gandhi story was exemplary. I'm just the mouthpiece, for this incredible journey. And it resonates with a lot of people all over the world. And for that, I'm so grateful.
Thank you, Bandana, for refreshing that story. We've of course all heard it, but hearing it from you is special. And then knowing that millions of people around the world are also now getting exposed to it is fantastic. Bandana, like Gandhiji, can you think of anyone else who wore values in his clothes? Of course, we know Jawaharlal Nehru had a rose, carried a rose. Bappi Lahiri, he used to wear a lot of gold. Anyone else who wore his values in his fashion?
Well, I want to skew that question a little bit, okay? Because of course, Gandhiji's story is about integrity, and it's a very positive story. But think about it. Clothes have been telling us the political statements, the ideology of different types of people. So, for instance, there is a uniform that ISIS wears, right? Why do they wear that uniform? They wear it
Correct.
because it will project their ideology through their clothes. Now, when we go onto social media and there are protests happening, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's about gender rights or LGBTQ rights, people are literally wearing their ideology on their sleeves now because we understand the importance, the visual significance of clothes. So it goes beyond just looking stylish and fashionable today. I think whether it is having a slogan on your T-shirt to choosing a sustainable fabric opposed to a polyester, we are all making a stand about who we are as human beings. And some can be negative, right? Some can be positive. There's a reason why monks, Buddhist monks, wear certain type of clothes, why nuns do the same thing. So it is clothes is a big part of the inner ideology, your inner rumblings
Correct.
within you, not just what is outside.
Correct. Personally, I've actually been a little reserved where I think showing religious values which cause divisions out in public are concerned. But on a little bit of a lighter note, what do you think about wearing your wealth? Is wearing too many lavish things, too much of jewelry, also a way of making a statement through fashion?
That's a difficult topic because it's so subjective, right? I mean, I'm a jingle jangle queen. Like, I have so much. I've got 5 anklets. I've got all these bracelets. So I'm no one to say that don't enjoy your jewelry. What I find a little dysfunctional, and this is a very personal statement, is that the amount of value that we put in things that are excavated from the earth, diamonds, gold, rubies, and we know all this kind of trade has there is a deep, dark secret to these
Right.
trades, and it's also not environmentally friendly anymore, right? So I keep wondering, like, I wear shells and I wear stones.
Right.
Why is that less valuable? It's something to ponder about. They're shells that come from the sea. Diamonds come from the earth. When did we start putting so much value and spending our hard-earned money? It's sort of the only way of defining that you've reached and you've accomplished something is having all that jewelry. So to each their own, but I've gone far away from the world of diamonds and gold.
Well, we can see the values of sustainability that are so close to your heart are shining through. We're going to get to that. But before that, Bandana, let's get into the glamorous world of running a fashion magazine. What about the values of a fashion magazine? Instead of promoting local talent, young designers, young models, we see our biggest titles promoting Bollywood stars or actually riding on the shoulders of Bollywood stars. What do you have to say about that?
See, I've always been very editorial, and I'm a writer. So I'm not the marketing person. I'm not the person who pursues advertising. I don't talk about the money bit, which perhaps is seen as a fallacy nowadays. But I do have a problem when we as a nation start defining our culture only through the lens of Bollywood. What happens is that becomes exported. That's what comes on social media. That's what we read about. And what happens is all the authentic stories, the deeper stories, some cool stories, some of the stylish stories that do not reflect in Bollywood get lost. And so writers and journalists, I think we are beholden to a better purpose of giving a more authentic idea of India. Because how many of us have traveled all over the world, and the first thing people will ask you is, how's Shah Rukh Khan? Or how's Priyanka Chopra? No one is asking you about Kathakali. No one is asking you about a sartorial inheritance of your saris, our music, our culture. Everything is about Bollywood. And so we are perpetuating a system. This is not to say I don't like Bollywood. I did my master's in filmmaking. I'm a film buff. I love all these new age stories that are coming out from India. But I think we have taken it just too far by making it this one bulbous monster that defines an entire nation that is so rich and diverse. I find it very unfair. How do other people then have a voice? How do the real creators, activists, stylish people who have individuality and soul, how do they make it into the cover then? You know? And don't they have a right? So for
Absolutely.
me, that became a problem. But of course,
Yeah. So, you know,
I did
I'm a
enjoy my.
magazine editor as well, and I do look at the commercials and the marketing aspects to a great extent. And I understand that there is an imbalance. I am hoping that we will get it corrected. In your 13 years at Vogue India, which was your favorite cover, Vandana? And also, which was your least favorite cover?
Oh, there were so many good covers. I loved all our anniversary covers because they were massive productions with multiple people. Um, my least favorite was, I think, the one with Ranveer Kapoor wearing a skirt,
Uh-huh.
and it was about gender fluidity.
Yes.
And I thought that was a little disingenuous because this is the time of diversity and authenticity, right? So there was no
Right.
reason why we should not have a gender fluid person, a real
Right.
gender fluid person,
Correct.
instead of
Correct.
copying a Bollywood star wearing a skirt and calling it gender fluid. So,
Right.
um, I mean, these thoughts that came to me later. When you're in the job, you're so excited and happy, and you enjoy it a lot, and you don't really go into a deep thinking spot. Maybe because I'm in Bali, I keep
Yeah.
reevaluating all the choices I made, and that's not to take away from my journey with Vogue. It taught me
Yes.
everything. You know, the
Yes.
experiences that I had were phenomenal. You know,
Right.
I have had the best time working with Vogue, traveling all
Right.
over the world, meeting
Right.
all the designers. I mean,
Yes.
I just ticked
Yes.
off all the boxes. But
Yes.
yes, sitting here in Bali, I always and often think about what are the things that I would have done differently.
Right. Now, you need to step back sometimes to reevaluate. You made a strong statement against the consumerist environment of businesses like Vogue. You said that after a point, you couldn't continue like this. Uh, please explain.
But that was a very personal journey for me. This has got nothing to do with anyone. It was me feeling guilty. We all have that. I live in Bombay. You live in Delhi. I mean, how many times do we cross streets where one side is the millionaire and the other side is a slum, right? I mean, that was our reality, this bipolarity of India. And those contradictions started getting to me, and I felt a deep sense of guilt that how is it possible that I can spend $2,000 to buy a fancy watch, but I don't think that money is valuable enough for me to put it in someone's education or help somebody in need. I mean, that would probably be my fifth watch, for instance, right?
Yeah.
So did we forget the value of our money and what kind of social impact that you can make if you actually use it for a better purpose? That's not to say don't buy your watch, but really, do you need 10 of them? So all this was like in my head, and I realized that the only way I could affect change is by changing myself. So this is not about me holding a big flag and pointing fingers at others, but I had to change my path. And that's when Bali happened. And here it's an organic growth into being an environmentalist because I'm surrounded by nature. We walk barefoot. I have the sea in front of me, and we love this nature. I mean, so it's a natural progress that I had in my journey.
So fantastic. We are going to move to Bali with you in just a bit, and we're going to then talk sustainability. But before that, I'm going to play a little game. I have my iPad in my hand, and I have 10 statements for which I want you to answer in yes or no quickly, and maybe just a few words after that if you want to explain it. Are we ready? Yes and no.
Okay.
Is fashion frivolous?
No.
Is the fashion world superficial?
Yes.
Is everyone in the fashion world fake?
No.
Are Bollywood stars truly the most fashionable of them all?
Not at all.
Do fashion designers copy designs?
Yes.
Do fashion magazines have a future?
No.
It's not getting any easy, is it? Is sustainability a fad?
Sorry, will you repeat that?
Is sustainability a fad?
No,
Is the industry doing enough to promote gender equality and pay parity?
not at all.
Is body positivity finally a thing, or do read thin models still rule the runway?
Thin models still rule the runway, sadly.
And finally, a personal one. Do we see you move back to India soon?
Yes.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. But before that, Bandana Tewari, tell us about your move to Bali. Are you sure there wasn't a boyfriend tucked away that led you there?
No. No, in fact, my Bali life, at least for the last 4 years, was very much like a mum, because I'm a single mum. My daughter and I moved into a beautiful villa, and because she was in grade 9, new friends, my house was full of teenagers that raided my fridge, destroyed my home every day. And I
Wow.
loved it. And so I played mum most of the time. Of course, I was writing. In fact, I worked for Vogue for 2 years from here, and before I resigned. And then, of course, because of this Gandhi speech, suddenly I was invited to different countries to give this talk or talk about sustainability. And so I was traveling every month to a different country. And so they were juggling being a mum and a sustainability activist. The good thing is, living in Bali, I promise you, like all my frills were gone. And it was very liberating. We literally walk barefoot. We are in t-shirts and shorts the whole day. No one judges you. You don't. I didn't have any standards to live by. I didn't have to dress up for anyone. If I wanted to dress up for myself, well and good. But I didn't have to play a role, because as women, and we know it, and I talk about this very frequently, women are constantly told to look a certain part, almost 3-4 times a day, right? As a mom, if you go to school, you need to look like a mom. If you're going to work, you need to have a work attire. If you're sitting in a conference room with men, then you've got to look a certain type. Then you go to a cocktail party, you have a type. Then you go for a sit-down dinner, then you have your new attire. Now, that's a consumerist agenda to make us buy more and more. And that was the most tiring thing in the fashion world for me personally. And women should not fall for it. During COVID times, you know what? We're wearing one garment through the day and it suffices, right? And so I think when all this is over, I hope people don't go into that awful term that's being used quite rapidly nowadays. It's called revenge shopping. Like there's going to be revenge shopping post-COVID. And I hope that is not going to be the case, because we as women must understand that this is actually a fashion gender issue. Like we should not be told that we have to be 5 types of women in a day. We are one solid human beings, right?
Absolutely. So, Bandana, today you're not only called fashion commentator, but you're also a sustainability activist. Tell me about your research and learnings.
Well, first of all, I have just started my journey. People think I'm an expert. I'm not. I'm learning constantly. I've been very privileged to be invited to amazing conferences around the world where people have been working in the sustainability world for 30, 40 years. I mean, I'm like a kid in a candy store, absorbing everything. And so you learn about incredible movements that are taking place. So if you go to, let's say, Scandinavian countries, I've been to like Copenhagen and Stockholm, there it's all about sustainability that comes from innovation and technology. So new fabrics being developed, vegan leather. I cannot begin to tell you. There's genius work that's happening out there, which will come to the larger audience and public sooner or later.
Yes.
But then when we talk about sustainability in Asian countries and in India, like when I'm in Indonesia, it's a very culturally deep country, just like India. And so what does sustainability mean to our region? It means made by hand. It means rural economies that thrived on hand-woven fabrics. That's so sustainable because it actually fueled the ecosystem. Gandhi believed in this rural economy. He was an anarchist. He didn't believe in a centralized government. He believed in village communities. He called them village republics because each village had its own dyer, weaver, cobbler, you name it. And they were rich because they all fed into that ecosystem. And that's how India was such a rich country that it was the jewel of British colonization because it was so rich, right? And cultural sustainability is what I like to talk about when I am in India, Indonesia, and other parts of Asia, because we have very similar histories of textiles and handmade. But when I go to especially Scandinavian countries or Western countries, there's a lot of technology that that where you see the innovation. I find that very exciting too.
So, Bandana, I'm the younger one of two brothers and one of the youngest cousins in the joint family that I grew up in. So I always got hand-me-downs. Does that make me a model for sustainability?
Absolutely, yes. We as families in India, that's what we did. I mean, we even have a term for it, jugaad. Like, who actually threw clothes? I wore my older sister's clothes. I mean, we passed on our clothes, our shoes. We never threw things, you know, because we didn't even have or required fridges, refrigerators, because you cooked what would be eaten in a particular meal, right?
Yes.
That was it. And then you cooked again for dinner. There was no storage. So it was a whole lifestyle of sustainability. And I keep talking about this. It's not just about wearing an organic t-shirt. Sustainability is a state of mind that actually takes into account everything, your thoughts, your emotions, how you react to people, how you react to your environment. And so that's why when I talk about Gandhi, the one statement that really works within sustainability is ahimsa, or non-violence. Non-violence in thoughts, deeds, and actions. And he himself said, you know, non-violence is not a garment that you put on and off at will. Its seat must be in the heart. I mean, it sounds so basic, right? It sounds so basic. If you actually imbibe it, it changes your world perspective. How can I hurt the environment? How can I hurt other people? I think that humanity comes in when you actually own that statement. I really
So we have a question coming in here from our reader, which is actually a very simple question. What can I do individually in my own little way to contribute to sustainability?
Buy less. Buy less, because then you throw away less. Look, fashion is a trillion dollar industry that employs millions of people. So we should buy things. We are human beings who love beautiful things, right? We have aesthetics in our soul. I get that. But please don't buy things that you will throw away. Please understand the value of how things are made. Go and look at the backstory of how a t-shirt is made. We keep forgetting, that fashion is not just what you see on the ramp. Every time you see a beautiful garment, you think that's it. That's it. It's not. Hundreds of hands have touched it. The invisible faces working in far-flung countries. The buttons come from China, the embroidery is from India, the cotton is from Bangladesh, just for that one shirt. So when you're buying something, please buy mindfully, not something because it's cheap. Because if you say it's cheap and I can buy more, that means you'll wear it less, and then it goes into a landfill. And every second, a garbage truck full of clothes goes into a landfill. Every second. Now that is hurting the environment. And we don't need to be that wasteful. So I suppose in one line, buy mindfully. Buy things that you're going to keep, that you're going to hand down. But please don't buy so that you can dispose.
That's a fantastic message, Bandana. I'm going to call it the Bandana Tewari fashion diet. It's sustainable and stunning. So, I have a confession. For the promotion of this episode, I, out of the 100 plus t-shirts that I own, I picked up a diesel t-shirt and wore it and didn't realize it until after the promotion played. And this morning when I was dressing up, I needed to make sure I did the right thing. You also know that I'm a little intimidated by you, so I didn't want you pulling me up in front of, thousands of people watching. So I picked this organic cotton top from Nicobar that had a label that says 100% organic fair trade center, better for people plus the planet. You approve?
Yes, I mean, you can't give that kind of certification and lie about it. And I know the brand, I know the history of the brand, and I believe it. But if you, and this is to anyone who's listening, and this is not just about a particular brand, we all have the capacity now to go and do our research. You know, you just Google and find out. I'm all about, if I want to buy a certain brand, I always go to the website. I go to what is their CSR policy? Do they give back? What kind of fabrics are they using? Look, every brand is not sustainable, and a lot of the brands are becoming incrementally sustainable. So we should give them a chance, right?
Yes.
But the onus is on us as consumers. If you're going to pull out money from your wallet, your hard-earned money, by all means, go and research what you are buying, because you need to be a well-informed consumer. Because when you're not a well-informed consumer, that means you're mindless. That means you're not mindful.
Fantastic. That's great lessons to learn, Bandana. Who'd have thought that sitting in two different countries, we'd be sharing experience like this? Last but not the least, Bandana, I have a personal question that I've always wanted to ask. But like I said, I'm a bit scared of you, so I've never mustered up the courage to ask. What's with your social media IDs and your email IDs? Why is it Behave Bandana? Is it like a life instruction to yourself, or what is it?
I mean, if you ask any of my friends or colleagues, I've sort of always been a little bit of an outsider, a maverick, a rule breaker, but in a fun way. I'm not a mean person, but I did break a lot of rules. So I couldn't help but give myself a naughty IG handle. And I didn't think that I would be using that handle in a professional way later in life. But I think it's true to my spirit. What I also have registered and I have not used yet, and I'm thinking about it, is Misbehave Bandana. That's also, I have that too, but I haven't started using
fantastic.
it. I think it's important to not be too serious in life, you know? I think as a sustainability activist, I'm not sitting, you know, in a gunny bag looking sad and morose and unoptimistic about the world. You know, we need to be positive. We need to have fun while protecting the environment. You can be stylish and a sustainable activist. So, and you can be naughty. So I like to put the joy and the naughtiness into everything that I do. And I thought Behave Bandana was a very appropriate handle for my IG.
Well, Behave Bandana is now telling us how to behave in life. So that's fantastic. Bandana, chatting with you is like catching up with a long lost friend, which it is actually. And this conversation could go on forever. But out of respect to the time we have, I'm going to have to bring this slowly to a close. On behalf of Madhu Neotia and the entire team of the India Story, thank you for being here. But more importantly, Bandana, on behalf of the planet and the future that can't really speak, thank you for standing up for the cause. We applaud your spirit and strength and hope you will give birth to more Bandana Tiwaris who will ensure a better future for all. Any last words before we sign off?
I want to say thank you. Thank you for engaging me. Thank you for letting someone who is sitting in a jungle so far away be engaged in this dialogue and making me part of it. So thank you, Madhu and the team. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bandana. And those watching, thank you for being here. Join us next Saturday for a very special royalty-tinged afternoon. And then every weekend through September for more performances, workshops, and conversations as the India Story continues.
Bye.